Hello again, welcome to RP-0 America. So I had a bit of a game crash, and so I'm not exactly where I was before. So we were previously coming in on a flyby of the moon, and since the end of that video and some content we've lost, we did a braking maneuver to get into orbit of the moon, and we've now set ourselves up to land. And in loading it up, interestingly, is showing a city on the moon, which I find a very interesting graphical glitch I've never seen before, where RSSVE or RVE or whatever is applying textures on the moon. Alright, so in our current state we have set ourselves up to land in this area over here. So we also have plenty of life support left. Food and oxygen are kind of key ones, since we're using just breathing oxygen, no liquid oxygen being converted to air, and food, there's no way to make food with our current technology or anything. So I want to land in this lava field, whatever, this area filled with lava, because it will be nice and smooth. And I've set up our crew so they are looking down on the moon, so they get to see the moon moving by as they wait for our kind of terminal landing event. So let's just do a quick save here. So we're going to start slowing around here. So it's not ideal because we'll be heading downhill at that point. So we'll have to be tricky. We'll lose a bit of delta V, but hopefully not too much to that issue, because it'll take a while to warp to that point just because we're so low. If you can see our true altitude, I brought this window up as well during the content we lost because of awesome game crash. To be fair, I haven't had very many crashes in 1.1.3 while recording videos at all. Very well behaved, so I've appreciated that. So yeah, it happens during one of my last videos of 1.1.3. That's yeah, I guess I'll live. Alright, so 12 minutes of real time, and we can't go above time warp 2 because we're just so close to the surface. So we're getting closer and closer to the surface. Like, there are bumps, which is why the true altitude keeps changing. I just want to make sure, yeah, I've got the camera in the right view. Oh yeah, and it's cities on the moon. I guess I got here too late. I don't think this is the dark side, but actually I'm absolutely not sure. Where is the Earth? Are we on the dark side of the moon? No. Or yeah, actually, this is no. We're landing on a very visible part of the moon. So if there were cities on this side, we probably would have seen them before. So let's just call that an actual graphical glitch, and not, a colony on the far side that we had previously not been aware of, like in some interesting science fiction movies of late. So we're very close to the surface when it bubbles up like that, when it has a large area. But ultimately, we should not crash into the surface before we start our landing maneuver. And we're moving very fast relative to the surface, so touching it would be very much not ideal at the present moment. So we've still got a few minutes out. I may as well try something just to say that we have. Let us send our pilot out on an EVA while very low over the moon. Report while in space near the moon. Indeed, because we've never done an EVA near the moon at all, let alone this close. So let's see, can we just direct transmit? No, a person cannot transmit. Indeed. Alright, so review store data, so that should show that, and we can transmit it. So that'll be our last science before we do our make or break landing on the moon. Transmission complete. So the next steps here, I haven't ditched any stages since the last recorded video. So this stage, we expended a good amount of the fuel through the APS, the SPS, sorry, engine here to slow down into orbit of the moon, and to slow down even more until we're basically, if we don't do anything now, we will eventually crash into the moon. And it still has a little under 1 kilometer per second of delta V, and it will act as sort of a crasher stage. There we go. As we slow down, the game has a chance to catch up and render the bit of bumps that still remain. Because if you look again, we go. If you look again, we are going to head over a fairly flat area, which has, there have been some more recent cratering events on the moon that are still putting craters in this, this fairly uniform lava covering. All right, so let's just point backwards. So slowly over time that is happening. So now let's pulse the RCS so that, there we go. So the fuel is settled, engine is very stable. Let us light it. All right. So we're going to pitch up a little bit like so because we don't want to fall too much. So these numbers are currently not really trustable, and the reason, time to impact is going to decrease pretty rapidly. Let's just get rid of that. And that is because the time to impact is telling us when this line seems to intersect the surface, and this line is rapidly changing. It's getting closer and closer to us as we slow down. Now we're heading up just a little bit with time, which is nice. Yeah, this is a really crucial time for any landing on the moon because you kind of have, it's your last chance to see what's ahead of you, so directly in the path ahead of us, where we will be landing. It looks nice and very flat there. So like if we'd seen this bump from a distance out, we would definitely be concerned, and we would not want to land near where this bump is. So suicide burner, I want to keep that number positive throughout our landing. There will be periods, like right now, because we're just under 4 minutes away from our landing. It would be okay if this went negative, but we also should keep in mind that this is the result of a complex calculation MechJeb is making for us based on the thrust-to-weight ratio of the engine we're currently using. And the actual engine we'll be landing with has a much lower thrust-to-weight ratio. So we must keep that in mind. There we go. So the surface is looking fairly flat out ahead of us. We are currently rising a little bit, which is not so bad. And that means we can actually see a bit of a distance. Interesting, there's like kind of a ridge there. Let me just pop out to that previous view. About 9 seconds to burn. So, and perhaps we can see the edge of this region, or maybe we're seeing the edge of that crater. It's hard to say at this scale. I don't have the best sense for converting between those two views. So we have burned out this crasher stage. So as you can see, suicide burner says nothing's going on because we don't have an active stage anymore. So let's dump the crasher stage, which will be pushed off. And you can see the lovely fuel tanks that are set up in there. And now we can turn on our final stage engine. So this is the actual delta V we'll be dissipating. In addition, we will also have to still get rid of the gravitational potential of our current altitude, and that's how much delta V we have left in the stage, so let's hope it's enough. So the suicide burn counter completely recalculates based on this new engine, and so we'll have to do what we can to basically make sure that is not negative for very long. Let me just quickly change something. Sorry, my other screen was showing a mini version of what's currently going on here, and so for all I know that would be impacting my frame rate. Alright, so that's definitely not a place I wanted to land near. It was a pretty substantial impact at some point in the relatively recent lunar geological history. So we are heading downhill now, but the impact we're having on our vertical velocity is good in that this is heading towards 0. So once it's a couple seconds over 0, I will change my pitch. I might even change my whole pitch program to be using the surface here rather than just doing manual adjustments. So let's find out. So let's just set that so it's not doing anything. So surface velocity negative. I definitely don't want to be set to a pitch negative, which would be pitching below the horizon. Like right now we want to, and it's kind of got a funny oscillation. Maybe is this engine gimbaling substantially? Let's see, maybe reduce how much it's gimbaling. Maybe let's not give that over to MechJeb just right now. This kind of was cycling through positions. Alright, so it's positive, and we wanted to keep it positive. So we are definitely approaching landing very quickly now in time. We can see our own shadow right there, which is terrifying, but now we're moving only relative to the ground, equivalent to the speed of sound on Earth. So it'd only be, it'd be a subsonic collision with the lunar surface at this point. But we definitely have enough delta V, which is nice. So do I have enough brains to complete this? So I think I'm just going to do it by hand because it's a bit tricky. If I set it to surface velocity negative, what happens is right when you're close to the surface, like you go from heading downwards of like 1-2 meters per second. So actually, I'll let it do that. So if we follow this track down, so you go from this, we'll be heading down, and then all of a sudden, if you start heading up, it completely reverses the direction of that vector that you're following, which is problematic. If you reverse the direction, it tries to flip the whole craft around to follow that, rather than what I wanted to do is just switch to up, which is what I will be doing during those last few seconds. So I'll switch to manual during those last few seconds, and then I'll just be popping to up. So I really want to keep this number positive because, and even growing is fine, because so you can see it's growing. So now note if I throttle down, it either stops growing or starts shrinking, right? So that is a way I can control the positive number. I can control whether just make it stay the same, or I could make it, you see the point. So if it's negative, you can't do that because I can't throttle above 100%. Okay, so we are approaching the surface very, very nicely. So now I'm just going to go to manual and just keep an eye on this and control things via throttle. So ultimately I want to end up pointed straight up. I want to completely get rid of our surface velocity. Alright, so it's going to be moving very rapidly towards being pointed straight up. So suicide burn, we can throttle down because that number started rapidly rising. There we go. So that's where that goes crazy. So now I need to throttle the engine so we start heading down. And I want my surface velocity to be absolutely as little as possible. So I'm heading just straight down. Down. We want to let it go down. There we go. And I don't need to do anything more with this stage at all. This stage will simply be bringing us in for our landing. Oof, we are drifting to the side. And just terminate the engine. There we go. And we just kind of rock to a stop, which is nice. All right. Nice enough. So we will save. We have successfully landed our 2 astronauts on the surface of the moon. Huzzah. So let's just transmit a little science. I suppose that won't close while that's happening. So let's see. So on the sunlit side, we've perfectly set up our 2 astronauts so that they will be exiting directly into the sun. Put down their ladders. Looks like we've got some more science that it wants to transmit. More science. Tons of science. Alright. You guys can transmit all the science. You can transmit the best science back to Earth. So our overall lander here is 10 tons at this state. And let us send out, so let's see, pilot versus engineer. Let's send out a pilot. So EVA. Alright, so that's lined up well enough. So EVA report from here. Ooh, weird. You're kind of falling. So let's just keep these sciences for now because we don't have we don't have the ability to transmit that science back to Earth from the spacesuit here. Alright. So the craft looks very large relative to our Kerbals because they are not human-sized. Whoa. She is doing interesting things with her face there. Alright. I would like to keep the suit on. EVA report from the surface. Oh, maybe not. Let's just keep it. Take a surface sample. That should, I guess it already would have automatically done that. Well, fair enough. All right. Well, how about a? Do I not get to put down a flag? Let's see. Take surface sample. Review sample. Review. Maybe I need to upgrade the astronaut complex another notch before I can do that. I don't know, but it's not letting her. Plant a flag. So, fair enough. Let's just ignore that for now. Grab and head back up. Wow, that ladder, very nicely positioned. Props to shops. Alright, and board. Alright, so back in. So let's just transmit some more of that tasty, tasty science. And then we'll send out the other astronaut. Let's see. Review telemetry. Nothing new there. Analyze telemetry, overwrite, yeah, okay. View the science we already have. So we've got the EVA report from the surface, which are called lunar seas, and the surface sample, so we won't be transmitting that. We'll be holding on to that. So we really don't, in an early mission like this, we really don't have equipment to do geological analysis on site. We brought along a pilot and an engineer, no geologists. All right, so EVA. Let's see if an engineer. Oh, weird. It feels like they came out the same side. That doesn't seem right, because each of those is legitimately a seat. Sure. I'm not sure how you got a surface sample from that high above. Can you also plant a flag up there? No. Take surface sample. Weird. So yeah, it's not giving me the option to plant a flag. I guess we take international laws are different in their world, as you're not allowed to plant a flag on the moon here. All right, I'll have to look into that. Maybe it is just a complex upgrade I haven't done. If anybody knows, feel free to tell me. Usually you can do that though. So EVA report, review sample, take surface sample. So Gregory has also visited the lunar surface here. Been out for 40 seconds, chattering away. Can we see the Earth from here? It'd be nice if we could. We might be able to. I can stare in the sun. But I currently cannot see the Earth offhand. So I'll have to look from a different view perhaps. How about that walking mode? All right, so F to climb, and we can climb aboard. So relative to the whole craft, the Kerbals look small, but compared to where they're actually sitting in, they don't look undersized at all, which is terrifying testimony to board anyway. Yeah, we'll have multiple samples in there. Just terrifying testimony to how cramped this space was. But they did do 2 week missions in the Gemini in low Earth orbit, so people could survive in there for a while. All right, so let's just jump out here to see if we can see the Earth. Oh yeah, it's over there. Not sure why I wasn't seeing it, but fair enough. It's somewhere. The truth is up there somewhere. There it is, just kind of overhead. All right, that's fair enough. So we've sent out our 2 astronauts, and we will be doing future missions to the surface, so I don't need to be too concerned that we couldn't plant a flag. It'd be nice to be able to plant a flag, but we will be leaving debris behind when we leave, so that's fair enough. Oh yeah, I didn't use 2, good, I still have ignitions left, which is nice, because as I described in previous videos, there is a fun glitch. Let's retract the ladder, and retract the ladder, where it kind of flips out when you try to separate these stages. Maybe they're clipping just a little too much or something, but regardless, it doesn't like to give me a clean separation. So I will point up and ignition. So we could definitely have stayed on the surface for longer, but this was basically a attempt at flag and footprints, lunar sample, first mission to the surface, so I'm not going for strict duration unless that was demanded of me. Nope, just do the thing, land or splash down. Nope, so I completed everything I needed for those missions, which is awesome. And this stage will be burning out very soon because it just had that little bit of extra fuel left, so I'm going to shut down that engine, bump it off, and yeah, see, it kind of gives you a bit of a flip like that, and that doesn't seem like much at all, but when you're leaving the surface, if I tried to just use that as a launch pad, it causes some problems. And so I'm definitely glad to have brought myself a bit above the surface of the moon, 2 minutes away from an impact before I did that. Because in previous attempts, I've had it just flip the craft out, and before you can really gain control of it again, you've smashed into the ground, which is just silly, considering how well the craft actually fits together and seems to behave. So I'm just heading down the 90-degree path, actually heading in the opposite direction of what I'd been orbiting. I'd been orbiting, I don't know, from above it had been clockwise, I guess, so now I'm going to be heading back out counterclockwise. I'm sure if any like serious moon landing buffs are out there watching this, they can give me some idea of whether anything like that was remotely done, if there's any reason that isn't done, where you'd usually come in clockwise or counterclockwise. there's an advantage to one over the other. Alright, so then we'll head just right down the orbital path, because we're already going to peak at a decent enough altitude. Like we're not going to be at risk of crashing into any lunar mountains at this point, which is what we want. Oof, let's just turn that off, because even if we wobble a bit, that's okay. I just don't want to waste the RCS fuel. We only have so much RCS fuel. Don't even have any showing in there. We've got some in here. And right, those RCS ports are off, because the RCS in here is very crucial for setting your orientation during re-entry. Actually, I probably also could have removed this, because we always have we always have people in the spacecraft. We don't need a separate remote control box. Alright, so we're approaching Apo, so I'm going to want to pitch a bit above to kind of maintain. Yep. Compared to the Earth, the moon's gravity is just so low. Like, landing on the moon is an amazing accomplishment. You need a very large rocket, moon program, very reliable hardware to do so, to send people to the surface of the moon and bring them safely back. But compared to doing something on Mars, it is so nice and so easy to land on the moon and to return, particularly to return to orbit. In terms of the what you have to do, you just go up and then just go sideways. You don't have to worry about any atmosphere getting in the way. You don't have to achieve a very high speed at all. Time to Apo. Why is it saying an hour? Is that really true? We've pushed it out that far away from us? Oh, I see. No, it's because we're heading down now. That's why. Well, sure, that makes sense. See, we're heading down, and let's level that out a little bit. Alright, there we go. So I have a larger, I'm trying to think of the things that I said in the bit of our video before the game crashed, and so therefore not in this video. So I've built a little bit larger version of this, just because this one is well below the amount of mass that the Saturn V can throw towards the moon. So this is a very successful, nice craft. And so we will be using that other one, which will, with the extra mass that we'll be able to throw towards the moon, land on the moon. I'll be sending more life support supplies and more hardware, so that the astronauts can stay on the moon longer. And I'll see if it's at all plausible to send a lunar rover? Yeah, a crewed lunar rover with them or not. I don't know, though. That might take quite a bit of design to be able to get it to fit in everything. I'm very impressed by the ability, how quickly the Apollo program was able to kind of change things around to send the very small lunar rover that they did send. And it really expanded the capabilities of the crew tremendously. They could travel substantial distances around on the moon near their lander. So one thing I'd like to try to do at some point with the moon, which I've never succeeded with, is to land two things fairly close to each other. So I could effectively send two separate launches from the Earth, and both of them will land things near each other on the moon. And there, if you look into the Apollo applications program, so they were basically brought the brain trust together who knew all the technology that had been developed during the Apollo program. And well, what could we do with this technology? Like, well, how could we do more on the moon? We could do better science, longer mission, more people, etc., with the hardware that they had built and designed, and stuff that they were fairly close to being able to add to that pack. And there's some really cool stuff that they had designed. So I'll look into that, into seeing what of that might be worth sending to the moon. Maybe like a more substantial rover. Maybe just land something that's like a full, maybe not a full Saturn V launch, but something sizable where it's just sent to send a heavy rover to the moon, or maybe two Saturn launches where one lands like we just did, but uncrewed, and so it has that entire couple weeks of supplies for crew, and then another crewed mission lands nearby, and I find that one something like that particularly fascinating. They also consider that with the Apollo lunar module. I think it was called MoLab. There's a couple. I definitely recommend looking into the Apollo applications project or program. I will look into, I think Astronautics has a page with some really cool pictures. So imagine what you could do with a lunar module, an Apollo LEM specifically, if it didn't have to take back off from the moon and return to lunar orbit. So rather than carrying all that fuel to the surface, having a second engine, basically use it as a mobile launch pad, all of that could be supplies that stayed on the moon. And all of those supplies could be there when a crewed mission comes down to have them, give them more life support equipment or more living space or working space, more science equipment, all kinds of cool stuff that they could do with that additional mass. So I can do something similar to that, either with this hardware or maybe with some Apollo hardware. I still kind of need to think about how in my universe here I will introduce Apollo hardware, because Apollo hardware is also really cool. FASA already has it in it. And so I definitely will be using Apollo type hardware for my Mars missions, like an Apollo capsule. I want to be able to send 3 people into space, and that is the only American hardware that I have that can do that. Alright, so here the burn that I just kind of eyeballed gets us fairly close to Earth, but doesn't completely bring us home. So let me just adjust when that burn happens. So for the same amount of delta V, how close can I possibly get? So that's the answer. And now let's just pack a little bit more delta V on. Looks like it doesn't like that. Okay, so clearly the issue is about prograde. So let's go take a look. See, it kind of puts me in this orientation because when I'm being flung off, that doesn't seem to be too bad. So see, the path that's being flung off is relatively within the plane of the moon relative to the Earth. But okay, so if I wanted to crank it down, like so, that probably did weird things, but I just wanted to see what, so that would be the negative normal, okay? The opposite of normal. That's where I want to add a little bit of delta V. Okay, there we go, yeah, and that's very clearly does the job I want. So let me just pluck a little bit of delta V off of each of these. There we go, and set it up so we'll be pretty close. 77 kilometers, that's great. And then even just with RCS, we'd be able to fine-tune it down to like whatever it is, 55 kilometers or something like that we actually want. All right, so we are approaching the end of our time here. 30-minute videos is what I tend to aim for. And so this will be our last view of the moon from close up with this craft. So now it's a really small craft. We expended a huge amount of our fuel for that landing and then to return to orbit. And because we're carrying a whole heat shield, all the life support equipment, we literally brought a blade of re-entry shield and parachutes to the surface of the moon, just because that's the way we do. That's that's Gemini Direct. If you want to do it with just the one craft and you don't do lunar orbit rendezvous, that's the stuff that we brought somewhat needlessly to the surface of the moon rather than doing it as a lunar orbit rendezvous. But yet, it allowed us to use to make the most reuse of all of our Gemini hardware, and ultimately we end up with 2 people on the surface of the moon. We end up with similar amount of life support time, etc. So, these are the trade-offs. That's kind of my opinion. They could have done that fairly straightforwardly if they hadn't been so committed to developing Apollo, which did allow them to place 3 people into space, just still only 2 people onto the surface of the moon, just like the design I've used here. Alright, so thanks for watching RP-0 America. Soon we'll have our next video where we use what fuel remains here to send our crew back safely, hopefully safely, to vicinity of the Earth and to re-enter and land safely, hopefully in an ocean. Goodbye.